Forget the familiar image of a Catholic church with towering Gothic spires, glowing stained glass, and silent rows of wooden pews. Some of the most unusual Catholic churches in the world were built in places where sacred architecture should have been almost impossible. Deep beneath the earth, miners carved chapels and crosses from walls of ancient salt. Inside the trunk of a living oak tree, a tiny Catholic sanctuary has welcomed worshippers for centuries. Near the frozen edge of Antarctica, a chapel offers prayer in one of the most isolated environments on the planet. Elsewhere, thousands of real human bones cover the walls and ceilings of a sacred space that forces every visitor to confront mortality. This is not a collection of temporary snow churches, inflatable structures, or Eastern Orthodox landmarks. These are 5 extraordinary Catholic churches shaped by dangerous landscapes, local devotion, human endurance, and architectural courage. Each one challenges everything we normally expect a church to be. Stay with us as we explore the top 5 most unusual Catholic churches in the world, and subscribe to the channel for more remarkable stories from Catholic history, architecture, and culture. Number 5. The Chêne Chapelle, France. In the Normandy village of Allouville-Bellefosse, a Catholic chapel stands without stone foundations, brick walls, or a conventional roof. Its structure is held above the ground by the roots of a living oak believed to be more than 1,000 years old. Inside its hollow trunk are 2 tiny sacred rooms arranged one above the other, making the Chêne Chapelle one of the most unusual Catholic churches in the world. The oak had already survived for centuries before anyone considered placing a chapel inside it. According to local tradition, lightning struck the tree and burned through part of its center. The damage created a large hollow, yet the oak did not die. Its outer layers continued carrying water and nutrients, allowing new leaves to appear even as the interior remained open. What looked like destruction had created enough space for people to step inside the trunk. In 1696, the local parish priest transformed the hollow into a small Marian sanctuary dedicated to Our Lady of Peace. Rather than treating the aging tree as timber to be removed, the community allowed its natural form to determine the chapel's walls, dimensions, and entrance. A second chamber, known as the Hermit's Room, was later established above the first. Visitors reach it by climbing a narrow wooden staircase that curves around the exterior of the trunk. Nothing about the building behaves like ordinary architecture. The interior changes as the tree expands, decays, and responds to the weather. Its walls were never designed by an architect because they grew naturally over hundreds of years. Space is extremely limited, forcing worshippers to enter carefully and stand close together beneath the uneven surface of the living wood. Keeping the chapel open has required constant intervention. Metal supports carry the weight of weakened branches, while protective wooden shingles cover areas where the original bark has disappeared. Some sections of the oak are no longer alive, but other parts continue producing leaves, turning the site into both a protected historical monument and a living organism that must be cared for rather than simply repaired. Catholic worship has not disappeared from the hollow trunk. Mass is still celebrated there on limited occasions, and the oak remains closely associated with the annual pilgrimage for the Solemnity of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary on August 15th. Pilgrims gather around a sanctuary, where the altar, staircase, wooden supports, and ancient tree have remained connected across generations. Number 4. The Wieliczka Salt Mine, Poland. Before entering the darkness beneath Wieliczka, generations of Polish miners stopped to pray. Their work carried them deep below the surface, where collapsing chambers, flooding, fire, and long hours without daylight could turn an ordinary shift into a fight for survival. Since reaching a church above ground was impossible during the working day, the miners brought their Catholic faith underground and began carving places of worship directly into the salt. Salt mining at Wieliczka developed on a major scale during the 13th century and continued through successive eras of Polish history. Over time, the miners created a vast underground network filled not only with shafts and working chambers, but also with crosses, statues, altars, and chapels. Rock salt extraction ended in 1964, while mining-based salt production at Wieliczka was finally discontinued in 1996. The religious spaces remained, preserving the spiritual world of the men who had spent their lives beneath the earth. The most extraordinary of these spaces is St. Kinga's Chapel, located approximately 330 feet below ground. Reaching it feels less like entering a conventional church and more like discovering a cathedral hidden inside the mine. The chamber opens into a vast sanctuary where the floor, walls, altars, religious figures, and decorative details were formed from the same mineral the workers once risked their lives to extract. Even the objects that appear to be made from glass or stone are connected to salt. Large chandeliers hang above the chapel, assembled from carefully processed salt crystals that allow light to pass through them. Along the walls, miners carved detailed biblical scenes, including a relief based on Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. Its figures do not project far from the wall, yet changes in depth, shadow, and perspective make the scene appear far more dimensional than the material should allow. These works were not produced by a team of celebrated cathedral architects. Much of the chapel was shaped by miners who developed their artistic skills after completing demanding shifts underground. Their carvings gradually transformed an excavated chamber into a complete Catholic sanctuary, linking physical labor with prayer in the same space. At the center stands an altar dedicated to St. Kinga, the patron saint of salt miners. Her relics have been kept in the altar niche since 1994. Nearby, a life-size salt statue honors St. John Paul II, whose connection to Welichka began long before his election as pope. He visited the mine more than once as Karol Wojtyła, although he did not return there during his pontificate. The mine is no longer simply a preserved industrial site. Organized Catholic groups can follow the God Bless Pilgrims route through underground places of worship created over many centuries. With advance arrangements, a priest may celebrate Mass for the group inside one of the chapels, while religious services and ceremonies continue to be held beneath the surface. The full pilgrimage route reaches a depth of approximately 443 feet, carrying visitors through the same underground environment where miners once prayed before beginning their work. Number 3. Our Lady of the Snows Chapel, Antarctica. At Belgrano 2 Station, distance is measured not only in miles, but in months of darkness, violent winds, and long periods when leaving the base may be impossible. The Argentine Research Station stands approximately 800 miles from the geographic South Pole, surrounded by a frozen landscape where temperatures remain below freezing and have fallen to nearly -65 degrees Fahrenheit. During part of the year, the sun never rises at all. Life in such isolation places enormous pressure on the scientists, technicians, and military personnel stationed there. Their work continues through polar night, extreme cold, and the knowledge that the nearest communities are far beyond the horizon. Within that environment, spiritual life could not depend on a conventional church exposed to the surface. The solution was to place a Catholic chapel where the Antarctic wind could not reach it. Our Lady of the Snows Chapel lies inside a natural ice cave near the station. Instead of constructing high walls against the storms, the community moved the sacred space beneath the frozen surface. The same cave also contains a museum dedicated to Argentine Antarctic explorer General Hernán Pujato, linking worship, national memory, and daily life at the station within one protected underground setting. The journey into the chapel bears little resemblance to entering a parish church. There is no bell tower visible across a town, and no stone facade facing a public square. Personnel pass through a narrow frozen entrance and descend into blue-white chambers formed by compressed ice. Light reflects across the walls, revealing cracks, layers, and irregular surfaces that no architect could reproduce in stone. Inside, the altar and religious images are placed against the ice rather than separated from it. The chapel remains simple because every object brought to Belgrano 2 must survive a difficult journey across sea ice and severe weather. Its atmosphere comes less from decoration than from the surrounding silence, the cold radiance of the walls, and the awareness that prayer is taking place near the southern edge of the inhabited world. The cave also offers practical protection. While structures on the surface must endure intense winds and changing Antarctic conditions, the ice surrounding the chapel creates a more sheltered environment. Even so, It is not a permanent building in the ordinary sense. The interior must be watched and maintained because ice moves, fractures, and changes over time. Belgrano II has operated continuously since its inauguration in 1979, supporting scientific observation and Argentina's year-round presence in Antarctica. Within its infrastructure, the Chapel of Our Lady of the Snows remains one of its most distinctive spaces, providing a place where personnel can gather, pray, and mark religious occasions without leaving the protection of the ice cave. Number 2. The Basilica of St. Ursula, Germany. The Golden Chamber does not allow the human body to disappear quietly into history. Bones emerge across its walls in crosses, Latin inscriptions, flowing curves, and carefully balanced geometric patterns. Above them, decorated skulls rest inside golden compartments, while rows of carved reliquary busts appear to watch over the room. This is not a crypt hidden beneath an abandoned building. It is a sacred chamber inside the Basilica of St. Ursula, an active Catholic church in Cologne. Long before the chamber took its present form, the site was associated with an ancient burial ground and the memory of Christian women believed to have suffered martyrdom in Cologne. An early inscription known as the Climatius inscription records that a sanctuary was restored in honor of holy virgins who had died for their faith. It does not identify St. Ursula, describe an attack by the Huns, or mention 11,000 companions. Those details entered the story gradually as devotion developed during the Middle Ages. According to the later legend, Ursula was a Christian princess traveling with a vast company of young women when they reached Cologne and were killed for refusing to abandon their faith. The number of companions eventually grew to 11,000, although historians have never found sufficient evidence to treat that figure as literal. What can be traced more clearly is the powerful cult that formed around Ursula and her companions, turning the church into one of medieval Cologne's most important pilgrimage destinations. The Golden Chamber was created to contain the enormous collection of relics associated with that tradition. During the 17th century, the existing storage space could no longer accommodate them, leading to the construction of the present chamber. Rather than concealing the bones inside sealed tombs, its designers incorporated them into the walls so that the entire room became an immense reliquary. Long bones form borders and zigzagging lines across the upper surfaces. Smaller fragments create letters and ornamental patterns, while skulls, wrapped in embroidered fabrics, occupy gilded niches. More than 100 carved reliquary busts, many decorated with gold or silver, surround the chamber. Some contain real skulls, and other human remains within their wooden forms. The arrangement can appear disturbing to a modern visitor because contemporary culture usually separates death from public worship. Medieval Catholic devotion approached relics differently. Physical remains connected with saints and martyrs were preserved near altars, carried in processions, and placed inside elaborate containers because the body was understood as part of the person who had witnessed to Christ. For that reason, the Golden Chamber was not created as a display of horror. Gold, carved wood, embroidered cloth, and human remains were brought together to honor those whom generations of believers regarded as martyrs. Its beauty and discomfort exist side by side, leaving little distance between the visitor and the reality of death. The Basilica of St. Ursula belongs to Cologne's celebrated group of 12 Romanesque churches and was later granted the title of minor basilica. Yet its place among the world's most unusual Catholic churches comes from the chamber hidden within it, where an ancient burial tradition, a legendary number, and centuries of devotional art remain embedded directly into the walls. Number 1. The Sedlec ossuary, Czechia. Suspended above the center of a Catholic chapel is a chandelier assembled from nearly every kind of bone in the human body. Skulls form its outer ring. Long bones extend through its frame, and chains of skeletal remains descend across the vaulted ceiling. Around it stand 4 enormous pyramids of bones, while garlands, crosses, chalices, and the coat of arms of the Schwarzenberg family have also been shaped from human remains. This is the Sedlec ossuary, the underground chapel beneath the cemetery church of All Saints in Kutna-Hora, and the most visually extraordinary Catholic church on this list. Yet the bones were never collected to create a tourist attraction. They came from a vast medieval cemetery surrounding a Cistercian monastery. During the 13th century, Sedlec became one of the most desirable burial places in Central Europe after a story spread that an abbot had returned from Jerusalem carrying soil from the Holy Land and scattered it across the cemetery. Whether every detail of that account can be historically verified or not, the belief transformed the ground into a place where countless Christians hoped to await the resurrection. As Kutna Hora expanded into a major medieval city, death arrived on a scale the cemetery could no longer contain. Famine, plague, dangerous mining conditions, poor sanitation, and armed conflict claimed tens of thousands of lives during the 14th and 15th centuries. The Hussite Wars brought further destruction to the region, while the cemetery continued receiving the dead until it covered several acres. When space eventually ran out, older graves were opened, and the exhumed remains were moved into the lower chapel beneath the Church of All Saints. The church itself was designed around a powerful contrast. Memorial services and prayer took place in the brighter upper chapel, while the darker chamber below held the bones of the dead. The arrangement connected two central Catholic beliefs within a single building: the certainty of death and the hope of resurrection. The lower level was not intended as a chamber of horror, but as a reverent resting place for people awaiting the Last Judgment. For centuries, many of the bones remained stored in large groups around the chapel. Their present appearance developed gradually, first through a Baroque arrangement associated with architect Jan Santini Ekel, and later through the work of Czech woodcarver František Rindt. After the Schwarzenberg family assumed responsibility for the site, Rindt was commissioned to restore and reorganize the skeletal decorations. He completed his work in 1870, transforming the chamber into the unforgettable space seen today. Rindt's most famous creation hangs directly over the chapel's center. The enormous bone chandelier is traditionally described as containing examples of all the major bones of the human body. Nearby, skulls and limb bones form hanging garlands, decorative borders, and elaborate symbols. He also constructed the Schwarzenberg coat of arms entirely from human remains, even reproducing a raven pecking at the eye of a defeated soldier, an image drawn from the family's heraldic tradition. Rindt signed his work near the entrance using bones, permanently placing his own name inside the composition. The spectacle attracts visitors from around the world, but Sedlec remains a functioning Roman Catholic church where Mass is still celebrated. Photography is prohibited in the ossuary because the parish considers it both a sacred space and the resting place of thousands of people. Visitors are asked to enter quietly, look beyond the visual shock, and remember that every skull and bone belong to a person whose name and life have largely disappeared from history. At the heart of Sedlec is the ancient Christian warning known as memento mori, meaning, remember that you must die. The message is not intended to glorify death or reduce human remains to decoration. It calls the living to recognize that time is limited, earthly status will pass away, and every life must eventually stand before God. At the same time, the bones express hope in the resurrection of the body, placing mortality and eternal life within the same sacred space. Sedlec stands at number 1 because no other church on this list brings art, human mortality, medieval history, and Catholic belief together with such overwhelming force. The chapel does not hide death beneath sealed tombs or distant memorials. It places the remains of past generations directly before the living, turning an underground ossuary into one of the world's most recognizable meditations on death, judgment, and resurrection. From a salt mine deep beneath Poland to a living oak tree in France, an ice cave in Antarctica, and sacred chambers decorated with human bones in Germany and Czechia, every place in this journey has challenged the conventional image of a Catholic church. These extraordinary spaces reveal that Catholic faith is not limited by stone walls, familiar designs, or comfortable surroundings. Even in the most isolated landscapes and through the most unexpected materials, people have continued to create sacred places dedicated to prayer, remembrance, and worship. Which of these 5 unusual Catholic churches surprised you the most? Do you know another remarkable Catholic church that deserves a place in a future video? Share it with us in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey, please give the video a like, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel now. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next exploration into the hidden history, architecture, and living culture of the Catholic Church. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.